Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. So today we are going to start the 18th chapter, the glorious 18th chapter. So as always, before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalake Chakshurum Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha.
Hare Krishna. So today we are going to cover 18.1 to 18.6. So I'll play the slokas now.
अथ अष्टादशोऽध्यायः मोक्षसंन्यासयोगः अर्जुन उवाच संन्यासस्य महाबाहो तत्त्वमिच्छामि वेदितुम् त्यागस्य च हृषीकेश पृथक् केशिनिषूदन श्रीभगवानुवाच काम्यानां कर्मणां न्यासं सन्न्यासं कवयो विदुः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं प्राहुस्त्यागं विचक्षणाः त्याज्यं दोषवदित्येके कर्म प्राहुर्मनीषिणः यज्ञदानतपः कर्म न त्याज्यमिति चापरे निश्चयं शृणु मे तत्र त्यागे भरतसत्तमा त्यागो हि पुरुषव्याघ्र त्रिविधः सम्प्रकीर्तितः यज्ञदानतपः कर्म न त्याज्यं कार्यमेव तत् यज्ञो दानं तपश्चैव पावनानि मनीषिणाम् एतान्यपि तु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलानि च कर्तव्यानीति मे पार्थ निश्चितं मतमुत्तमम्.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I think today
Hare Krishna
Anuja ji.
Guruji. It's
Oh.
Anuja ji who is going to read it.
Okay.
Thank you, Anuja ji.
Thank you. 18.1 Arjuna said, O mighty armed Rishikesha, O slayer of Kesi, I wish to understand the true nature of renunciation, that is sannyasa, and the difference between renunciation of actions and renunciation of the fruits of actions, that is Tyaga. 18.2 The Supreme Lord said, the learned ones understand sannyasa to be the renunciation of actions motivated by desire. The wise ones declare that Tyaga is the abandonment of the fruits of all actions. 18.3 Some wise men declare that all actions are tainted with evil and should be renounced, while others assert that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should not be abandoned. 18.4 O best of the Bharatas, hear from me the conclusion about Tyaga. O tiger among men, Tyaga is declared to be of three kinds. 18.5 Actions based upon sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. They must certainly be performed. Indeed, acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are purifying even for those who are wise. 18.6 But even these actions should be performed abandoning attachment and the desire for rewards. O Partha, this is my definite and supreme verdict. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Please feel
Thank you.
better soon.
Yeah, thank you.
So welcome all. So we are finally in the 18th chapter. This chapter is known as Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. And it's a very profound culmination of everything that we have learned so far. And it is also the longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. So, as we discussed earlier, it will be somewhat like a summary also, and also like a more profound explanation of things that we have already learned. So how this, all water bodies, like all rivers and streams, all of that, how they enter into the ocean. Just like that, Krishna is going to bring everything that he has been teaching so far, and he is going to culminate all of that into this 18th chapter. So all the threads, like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, all of that he is going to tie them all together here in one big ocean, which is called the Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. So as usual, this chapter starts by our friend Arjuna. He is asking Krishna a very profound question. And so he says, "Oh Krishna, can you explain to me what is the difference between Sannyasa and Tyaga?" These are two very powerful words used in Sanatana Dharma. Tyagi also is a name that we are familiar with, and Sannyasi is also a name that we are familiar with. So Arjuna says they both are talking about giving up. They both are talking about renouncing. So then what is the difference? It's very profound, because Krishna is going to go into depth there. And it is profound because throughout our history, a lot of spiritual seekers, they have, I would say, it's not intentional, but for whatever reasons, they have misinterpreted renunciation. The moment somebody hears the word renunciation, they kind of, associate that with just giving up everything. Like they will not do any job, they will not do any household work. They just have to go to a mountain, they just have to go to a forest. That has been what a lot of spiritual seekers have spoken about whenever they talk about renunciation. So now, but Krishna is trying to now answer Arjuna's question, because this kind of misinterpretation, what happens, it creates a conflict. It creates a conflict between the worldly pursuit and the spiritual pursuit. So somehow it feels like you have to choose either this or that, and that is how it has been misinterpreted. And that is why Arjuna's question is so important, because Krishna is going to help clarify this very, very profound aspect for all of us. Krishna has already taught this in different ways, but now he's going to tie it all together. You see, very, very important. As we say, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, we have seen that based on the context, Krishna will use a certain word to address Arjuna, and vice versa. Arjuna will also use a certain name to address Krishna based on the context. So that itself has a lot of meaning in it. Now, if you see here, in the opening verses, Arjuna is calling Krishna as Keshini Sudana. Very important. Keshi is the name of a demon. Some of you were with us in the Narayaniam session, so maybe you remember. There we studied the story of Keshi, where Keshi was a demon, terrifying demon, who took the form of a horse and, wreaking havoc all over Vrindavan. And then Sri Krishna has to subdue it by, he pretty much put his hand in its mouth and expanded his hand so much that it choked on it and it died. And so it was a very kind of a powerful demon, and the story is kind of very popular. So Swami Mukundananda, he is giving a nice interpretation of why Arjuna is calling Krishna as Keshi. So I took that from his lecture. So Mukundananda, Swamiji, he says that just like Keshi was a wild horse causing destruction, you pay attention, it is extremely important for all of us here, what the significance is. So Mukundananda, he says, just as Keshi was a wild horse causing destruction, doubts in our mind, they cause similar destruction. So powerful. He says, just like an untamed horse runs wild, doubts, if not handled correctly, they also run wild in the mind. And they trample all the delicate flowers. What delicate flowers? The flowers of faith and devotion and spiritual understanding. So beautiful, right? The analogy. So that is the significance of why Arjuna is calling Krishna as Keshi Nisudana here. Because he's essentially saying, oh Lord, just like you subdued that wild horse Keshi, subdue the wild horse of doubts that is running wild in my mind. So he wants Krishna to take care of his doubts, make sure that he is doubtless now. This concept is not just here, this concept is there in other traditions also. For example, in Buddhist tradition, they call it the monkey mind. They say that how the monkey jumps restlessly from one tree to another, just like that, And the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, they call doubt. The word used for doubt is samshaya. So Yoga Sutras, the Patanjali also says that samshaya is one of the primary obstacles for spiritual progress. And by invoking Shri Krishna as Keshi Nisudana, Arjuna is acknowledging that his spiritual growth and spiritual clarity cannot come just by his own intellectual pursuit, and he needs Krishna to come and help remove those annoying doubts that are still playing in his mind. So important. Is it not important for all of us? I mean, we all have the same problem. Pura Ramayan khatam hota hai, and then later on somebody will come and say, but was it right that Rama had to put Sita through a Agni Pariksha? And that's it. Now suddenly, whatever we learnt in Ramayana takes a back seat, and now this doubt starts running wild in the mind. It doesn't let us internalize any other teaching, you see. So doubts are so powerful. They are so damaging. What is more beautiful is right after that, he's addressing Krishna as Rishikesha. What is Rishikesha? See, in Sanskrit, the word Rishika means senses, and Isha means the Lord or Master. So, by calling Krishna as Rishikesha, Arjuna is recognizing that sensory distractions are also a major obstacle. And because Krishna is the Lord of all the senses, he has the power to help him control his senses and overcome all the distractions. So beautiful. And this is similar to what Krishna had said in chapter 5.13. Where he said, Sarva karmani manasa sansayasyaste sukam vashi navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvan karayan. This is where Krishna used the term Navadvare, if you remember, where he called the body as the city of 9 gates. What was the significance there? The significance was we have to control those gates. So Krishna said, those who are self-controlled and detached, they can live happily in this city of 9 gates. So again, by invoking Krishna as Rishikesha, Arjuna is acknowledging that he needs this kind of internal mastery, and he is asking Krishna to help him. Now, using these two names together, see, they are very profound, very, very powerful when he is using these two names together, because now that reveals that Arjuna is not just a doubtful guy. He's not just he's a very elevated student. And he is such an elevated student that he understands the sophisticated nature of spiritual development. And he recognizes that he needs both. What both? He needs freedom from doubt, and that is why he calls Krishna as Keshi Nisudana, and he also needs mastery over senses and sensory distractions. So he is calling Krishna as Rishikesha. And these two together are important before he can make any real spiritual progress, and that applies to all of us. That is why even at the end of this session we always say the floor is open if you have any questions. That is because we don't want people to have any doubts lingering. There are any doubts, if you have doubts about the teaching, if you have doubts about the teacher, if you have doubts about God, they have to be resolved as quickly as possible. Otherwise they will never let us progress in the true sense. And just by not having doubts is not enough. We also have to have mastery over the senses. So these two things have to come together. So now let us come back to Arjuna's main question, where Arjuna was asking, what is the difference? What is the difference between Sannyasa and Tyaga? I don't know if any one of us have had this question, but I think I have had this question, and I know many other people have come across or had this question, because these two words have been thrown around, in our scriptures. Some people are called as Tyagis and some are called as Sannyasis, and whenever somebody says Sannyasi, the picture that comes to mind is somebody wearing just a langot or some thin cloth and nothing else, and they're begging, isn't it? That is how the image comes to us. So now let us see how Krishna is trying to solve this. So Krishna very beautifully clarifies. These are actually two major approaches in our scriptures. I'm just explaining a little bit more. This concept of Sannyasa and this concept of Tyaga, they are two major approaches to spiritual life which have been prominent in our Sanatana Dharma and Vedanta. Now these paths may seem contradictory, because of which there is a lot of confusion, and Krishna is now trying to clear that. He is explaining that Sannyasa refers specifically to renouncing actions that are motivated by desire, whereas Tyaga refers to renouncing the fruits of outcomes of all actions. This is how Krishna is explaining now. So this distinction may seem subtle, but it is very revolutionary. Because why it is revolutionary is because he is now asking us to shift the focus. He is saying, shift the focus from what you do externally to how your mindset is when you do any action. So he is saying, shift the focus from the out to in. That is why it is very revolutionary, the way he is teaching this. And I think we already studied this. In the 4th chapter, Krishna spoke about it. 4.18, where Krishna said, they who see inaction in action and action in inaction, he said, they are wise among humans. Although performing all kinds of actions, they are yogis and masters of all their actions. So this message was there in that shloka itself. Now let us see. Does it seem paradoxical? Does it seem a little confusing that Sannyasa is not actually abandoning actions, but recognizing that it is the self, the higher self, that is actually the doer, and so we should not be too attached. Similarly, Tyaga is not just refusing the outcomes of actions, but it is mentally offering those outcomes to the divine without any attachment. See, this may all seem a little confusing still, but we will go a little deeper and it will become clearer. I also want to let you know that in olden days, there were two schools. There were many schools, but out of those many schools, there were two very prominent ones. One was called as Sankhya and one was called as Mimamsa. There are two schools of thought that we have. And chapter 2, if you remember, it was based a lot on Sankhya. So, and Krishna also acknowledges this diverging viewpoint, because where is the divergence? The divergence comes from these two schools primarily. So, when it comes to renunciation, Sankhya says one thing and Mimamsa says one thing. And they seem a little contradictory. And now Krishna is trying to converge and kind of bring some kind of a combined philosophy. Now let us see how he does that. So Krishna says that from the Sankhya perspective, you may all know Kapila Muni was the proponent of Sankhya philosophy. So according to the Sankhya philosophy, Kapila Muni, he said that we have to renounce all actions. When you say renunciation, you have to renounce everything, all actions. When he says all actions, that even include any kind of Vedic rituals or puja or whatever you talk about. So Kapila Muni was of the opinion that renunciation means renounce all actions. But he had a very strong reason. Why? Because according to Sankhya philosophy, every action when we perform, naturally we will expect some outcome. So this was the Sankhya's approach. Sankhya said the way the mind works, the human mind, anytime we do any action, knowingly or unknowingly, we are going to have some desire. We are going to have some expectation. And Kapila Muni in Sankhya philosophy, it says that because of that, every action is going to create a karmic bondage. It's going to create a karmic entanglement. See, because what law of karma says, karma doesn't just mean doing bad things. Even good thing is karma. There is good karma and there is bad karma. And both are karma. So if you have bad karma, you have to do something to negate it. If you have good karma, you have to enjoy it. There is no escape. As long as you are, within the game of karma, you do good, you get some rewards. You do bad, you get some lessons. That is why Sankhya philosophy says, for true liberation, you should have complete cessation of all action. Now, let us see. This is very, very, radical. And so we discussed all this concept of Purusha, Prakriti, and do you remember we discussed all of that? And how it is never changing, ever changing. They all come from Sankhya philosophy. It is full of analysis. Very detailed analysis on the nature of everything. That is Sankhya philosophy. And it says that because Purusha is very distinct from Prakriti, we have to associate with that Purusha, and when we associate with that Purusha, all activity belongs to not Purusha, and that kind of so let us not go too deep there, but I hope you understood what Sankhya philosophy says. It says that renounce all actions. Now, what does Mimamsa philosophy says? Now, Mimamsa philosophy says that you have to perform prescribed duties, including the Vedic rituals. There are philosophers like Jaimini who are proponents of Mimamsa, and they say that if you do not perform duties like those Vedic rituals and your own pujas and your own duties, that is adharma. And you cannot achieve liberation as long as you are following adharma. You see, even that makes sense, correct? If you actually introspect, both make sense. What Kapila Muni said in Sankhya also makes sense, because Kapila Muni says that no matter what action you perform, knowingly or unknowingly, you are going to have a desire for outcome, and that is going to create bondage. That makes sense. Mimamsa philosophers like Jaimini, they say that if you don't do your prescribed duties, then that is adharma, because that is also given in our scriptures that, dharma means you follow your duties, adharma means you are not following your duties. And he says, how can you get liberation if you are adharmic? That also makes sense. Correct? And this is the confusion. So if you see the Mimamsa Sutra, it says, Chodana Lakshanortho Dharma iti Nyayat. It says, Dharma is that which is indicated by Vedic injunctions. So according to that school of thought, performing your duties is not optional. It is essential. And so then Mimamsa says that instead of abandoning all action, you just perform actions with the right attitude. This is Mimamsa's stick. So see, now it all feels confusing and contrasting. And that was the confusion that Arjuna is coming up with. He's saying, Krishna, I am confused. No, you tell me, what am I supposed to do? Because, if all action creates bondage, then how can you create even rightful action without bondage? And if abandoning prescribed duties is adharmic, then how can you renounce actions and not get into bondage? You see the kind of confusion that comes, Oh my God. Now let us see how our Jagat Guru, how the master philosopher Krishna approaches this. So now Krishna is resolving this kind of philosophical confusion, and he is resolving it with remarkable subtlety. And he does not dismiss either of these philosophies. He does not say, oh, Sankhya is wrong, or he does not say Mimamsa is wrong. And in verses 5.6, if you see, Krishna, he kind of offers his own conclusion. So he says that actions based upon sacrifice, charity and penance, they should never be abandoned. This is Krishna's philosophy. He says they must certainly be performed. He says, indeed, acts of sacrifice, charity and penance, they are purifying. No matter how wise you are, they are still purifying. So you have to perform them. But even these actions have to be performed by abandoning the attachment to the results and abandoning the desire for rewards. He says, "O Partha, that is my definite and supreme verdict." So what has Krishna just done? Krishna has beautifully synthesized the Sankhya's emphasis on total detachment with Mimamsa's emphasis on performing rightful duties. So he says, perform your rightful duties with detachment. So he's kind of synthesizing both. Does it sound familiar? Now you go back, karmanyevadikaraste mafaleshu kadachana. Now you see, it was not just don't expect results. Because at that stage, some of us even felt that, how is it possible? It is contradictory and all of that. But now you see in 18th chapter how deep it really was. That one sloka was a synthesis of Sankhya and Mimamsa philosophies, two colossal philosophies where Krishna had beautifully just summarized all of that together. So Krishna is confirming, he is saying that certain actions like yajna, dana, tapas, they should not be abandoned. They are purifying practices and they prepare the mind for higher spiritual realization. He says, however, even they should be performed without attachment to the results, without attachment to the fruits. In other words, actions performed without selfish motivation and without attachment to outcomes, they do not create bondage, karmic bondage. This is the assurance given by Krishna. So he is clarifying and he is giving his assurance, saying that Sankhya just says action creates bondage, so you should not do actions. Mimamsa says rightful actions have to be done, otherwise it is adharma. But both of them leave gaps. In Sankhya doesn't say how to avoid adharma if you don't do rightful actions, and Mimamsa doesn't say how to avoid bondage if you are going to perform rightful actions. So Krishna brings that together and he says, perform rightful actions without attachment to outcomes, and if you do that, it will not create karmic bondage. It's a tight rope, right? It's like walking a tight rope. That is the middle path. Krishna has always recommended. The middle path is perform duties with the right attitude. What was the attitude Krishna told us? I offer everything to Krishna. I offer the results to Krishna. I sacrifice the results to Krishna. This is why it was so beautiful and so powerful that we have already studied. And then Krishna goes a little deeper. Krishna says, now that I have explained this to you, I am also telling you that yajna, dana and tapas, they are the foundation of spiritual life. And you have to understand them in the right context. Yajna, he says, for example, is not just offering. So this is also important. This is what we were discussing earlier, like, in there some festivals and all, we just mindlessly, kill animals and all, and we say that is sacrifice. That is not really sacrifice. So Krishna is saying, it has to be an act of selfless service. And it has to be an act of humble offering. That is yajna. And Krishna has said this in the 4th chapter, where he said that the essence of sacrifice means what? You are offering something really valuable to you without expecting any return. You are not sacrificing some poor creature which means nothing to you. How does that become a sacrifice? What are you sacrificing? I don't know, some of us, especially people who grew up in reading the English curriculum, British curriculum, we have all heard about the story of David and Goliath. Have you all heard about the story? David and Goliath? Okay, I think some of us have. Do you know what was one of the core concepts? Because when the God man, when he approaches the tribe of Judah, where he's talking to David's father, he says, are you willing to what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to give to God? And the father, makes his 4 sons come, and he says, you can take them with you. They can come to you for war. And then the God-man says, well, but you are still not giving me that which is most valuable to you. Because it was David who was dearest to his father. It was David for whom he had the most affection, most love. And he's the one he's protecting. So he's sending David to the field to take care of the sheep. And he's giving the other 4 sons to war. He's saying, take them for war. And he says, that is not sacrifice. Sacrifice means that which is most valuable to you. Are you willing to give that? And then the story of David and Goliath goes ahead, and then you all know how it proceeds. But this to me appealed a lot, because Krishna is saying the same thing. He's saying sacrifice means you are giving away something that is valuable to you, something that is important to you. Are you willing to give that away? What? You are going to a temple and throwing a few rupees and you think that is sacrifice? You have some extra money that you are throwing away to a beggar and you call that a sacrifice? You have some clothes that you don't really need and you are just giving it away, you call that a sacrifice? Sacrifice means what you really love. Can you give that away? Somebody says, I cannot live without coffee. Can you give that away? See? Something as simple as that. That is what Krishna is saying. And you do that how? With a mindset of surrender and devotion. That is true yajna. Just like that dana. Because, see, here Krishna said yajna, dana, tapas. So he's going a little deeper into yajna, dana, tapas. Dana, just like that, it means charity, but that also should be done with humility. That also should be done selflessly. You all remember the story of Yudhishthira and the golden mongoose. So that should give you the picture of how dana should be done. Penance is tapas, austerity. And Krishna also said tapas is not just, or he said tapas is of 3 types, which involves body, speech and mind. You remember? Tapas of body, tapas of mind, tapas of speech. Excellent. Okay. And why we should do yajna, dana, tapas? Because they purify the mind, they purify the heart, and they provide us with true vairagya, which is important. How do they help us develop vairagya? When you have attachment to possessions, then you counter that by yajna, which is sacrifice. When you have attachment to wealth, then you counter that by charity or dana. And when you have attachment to comforts, you counter that by penance or tapas. So that way, attachment to possessions, wealth, comfort, all of that are taken care of. And that is what gives us true vairagya, complete 360-degree vairagya. Now Krishna also again remained, even that do without expecting results, without being attached to fruits. Now don't consider yourself, I'm such a great tapasvi, or I'm such a great, I have donated so much, I have helped so many people. So what? See, the moment we get into the mindset of I have done so much for so many people, in other words, somewhere you are thinking you should get something in return, that is not the right dana or the right yajna. I hope now it is all making sense. Now let us come to the other very beautiful part, another profound part now. Now we saw how Arjuna was addressing Krishna, where Arjuna was calling Krishna as Keshinisudana and he is calling him as Rishikesha, and we saw what it means. Now see how Krishna addresses Arjuna. That is very beautiful and profound there also. Where he calls Arjuna as Vyagra. Vyagra means what? Tiger among men. So does it make sense? If you are asking me to explain to you the difference between Tyaga and Sannyasa and renunciation in general, and if I am explaining to you the deep concepts of renunciation and then I am calling you tiger among men, somewhere something is not making sense, because so what Krishna is saying is the path of true renunciation requires extraordinary courage. So that somehow sometimes may not make sense, because it is like, well, why would it require courage? Because sannyasa also means giving up something. Tyaga also means giving up something. And why is it a courageous thing? Giving away. I'm holding this and somebody is threatening me. I'm like, okay, take it. No, I'm giving it away. It doesn't seem like an act of courage. So then why is Krishna calling Arjuna a tiger among men in this context? That is why it is profound now. The answer lies in understanding what is truly being renounced. So if you pay attention, if you have understood what Krishna has taught so far, what you give was never the issue. Because Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, nothing belongs to you anyways. So what you give away was never the issue. What was the issue? The issue was your mindset when you give it. The issue was handling the ego, handling the pride, of me, as if I am special, I am popular, I am this, I am that. You see the problem? I am helping a friend, but I am helping a friend. I am so this, you put an I in front of anything that seems very noble, like, and suddenly you will realize that the problem, what the problem is, Trustworthiness is a virtue. The moment you say, I am trustworthy, that is no longer a virtue. Being truthful is a virtue. The moment you start saying, I am so truthful, now you are not going on the path of virtue. Because now it is the ego. Now you are feeding the ego, you see. So then what is renunciation? True renunciation. True renunciation means, do you have the courage to confront your ego? Do you have the courage to confront your own pride? That takes enormous amount of courage. Confronting anybody else is not that big a deal, Tomorrow you can stand up and confront me. You can stand up and confront God when you are doing your puja. Always confronting somebody outside, it's no big deal. But confronting your own ego, confronting your own pride, it takes tremendous amount of courage. And that is why in this context, Krishna is calling Arjuna as, oh, tiger among men. So he's telling him, you are the courageous person. You have the courage to do what I'm asking you to do. Go and confront your ego, confront your pride. Very powerful. Our great saint Kabir has also said very powerful things here. Beautifully he writes. He said, listen to this, what Sant Kabir is saying. He's saying, तीर तलवार से जो लड़े तो शूरवीर नहीं होए, माया तजी भक्ति करे शूर कहावै सोए. He's saying, तीर तलवार से जो लड़े means people who are fighting using swords and arrows, they are not truly brave. Then who is truly brave? They who are able to renounce Maya and engage in bhakti. They are the truly brave. So it is capturing the essence of spiritual courage. And renouncing Maya is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. And engaging in bhakti, that demands a lot of courage. More courage than what is required to just fight with somebody physically. That is the message here. So why is it so hard? So I went one step further and did a little bit research on Sant Kabir's philosophy. In the first batch of Bhagavad Gita, I stopped with just that one doha. But this time I went a little deeper and I wanted to see what is Kabir's philosophy on. Because Kabir has said this, but why does Kabir think that Maya, renouncing Maya is so difficult? So I went just a little further and I found Kabir's beautiful philosophy. Where in the other doha, Kabir says, very profound, he says, Maya chaya ek si, virila jane koe, bhagata ke piche lage, sammukh bhage toye. See what he's saying. Very, very beautiful. Maya and chaya. Maya, you know what Maya? Chaya means shadow. Ek si, virila jane koi. Virila means like a very unique, very rare is the person who can. So let us see what he's saying. He's saying Maya is just like a shadow. Rare is the one who understands this. It chases the devotee from behind, but runs away when faced directly. Now think about it. It is so profound, so beautiful, and explained so nicely. So Kabira, what he's saying, look at your own shadow. And he's explaining Maya like that. He's saying, look at your own shadow. That represents Maya or worldly illusion. He says, imagine that you are standing in a field on a sunny day. Then what happens? The sun is there, and the sun represents Sat, absolute truth, ultimate truth. And the shadow, or you can also say the sun represents the Atman, however you want to look at it. And your body is the self, the Jiva, which is limited by ignorance. And what is behind you when you are facing the sun? The shadow. He says that is Maya, illusion. Now what happens when you move closer to the sun? Your shadow follows you. But what happens if you try to go towards the sun very quickly? Like, let me now run. The shadow will run equally fast, na? So, आप पीछा नहीं छुड़ा सकते. You cannot just escape from Maya by trying to run away. Because that is how he is explaining it very beautifully. Like the shadow, just like you cannot get rid of that shadow by just running faster towards the sun. Now let us say you decide, okay, let me face Maya. So you are now going to turn towards the shadow. Now shadow is in front of you now. And now you are saying, now I am going to chase Maya. You think you can go and control Maya. You can go capture Maya. So what happens if you run towards your shadow? The shadow is also still going to keep running backwards. Visualize karo. This is what it is, right? Doesn't matter which side you run. You are never going to escape or capture. The shadow will be where it wants to be, and it is going to always be following you. You see the problem? Now Kabir is pointing out that Maya is very persistent. It does not leave you alone, and it also does not let us fulfill our desires. That is the Tatparya. Tatparya is, I cannot run away from my desires, and I cannot also completely fulfill my desires. This is what we have learnt in Bhagavad Gita so far, and Kabira is using the analogy of a shadow to beautifully explain this. You cannot run away from the shadow, you cannot run towards the shadow. That is why attachment and aversion both are futile. So what is Krishna's teaching when he is saying perform actions without attachment? He is saying that is how you can free yourselves from Maya. So Krishna is saying you cannot either try to escape from the shadow by choosing the path of Sankhya, which says ignore all actions, and you cannot try to control Maya by just purely choosing the path of rightful action either. But what you have to do is do the actions without attachment. Now let us see why that works. Because see, this is the more beautiful aspect is, tell me something, the shadow, is the shadow created by the sun? No, because there are other parts where the sun is illuminating, there is no shadow, no? So you cannot say that the sun is creating the shadow. So then who is creating the shadow? It is our own body. It is our body which is creating a shadow when it is blocking the sunlight. The same way, this is what is most profound. Even if it doesn't make complete sense now, let it be inside your mind and keep doing Manan Nididhyasan. One fine day, this will turn out to be the most absolute important truth that we all need to understand. Just like the sun does not create a shadow, it is the body that creates a shadow by its act of blocking sunlight, just like that. We said shadow is Maya, so Maya cannot arise from truth. So we cannot say that the Sat, the truth created Maya. We cannot say that, no? Just like we cannot say sun created shadow, we cannot say the Sat created Maya. But it appears When does it appear? When the jiva, full of ignorance, obstructs the knowledge of Sat. Now see the beauty. The beauty is, the Maya is also, like we say, everything is an illusion and that is Maya, but then that Maya is also an illusion. That Maya also appears. And when does it appear? It appears only when our ignorance blocks the truth. Just like a shadow appears when our body blocks the sunlight. It's actually very, very beautiful. See, even physically, if you see, the only way to totally get rid of your shadow is go very close to the sun. If you go very close to the sun, then there will be no shadow. You are so close to the sun. Just like that, because the sun is so huge, so enormous, so vast, you are nothing. You are insignificant and you are so far away from anything that can, reflect your shadow also. So the shadow goes. Just like that, we have to go towards truth. We have to get rid of our ignorance. And that is how Maya will disappear. See the problem. Now does it make sense when we earlier discussed why we cannot win over Maya? It is not possible. Why we say that only through divine grace? Because you have to go towards the light. You have to go towards Sat. That's the only way you can get rid of the shadow. So Krishna is explaining that true freedom will come when we see beyond the temporary attractions of Maya and when we act with a pure heart, surrendering fully to the divine. That is why that surrender is so important. So finally, Kabira, he is adding a caution. He is saying that a mind influenced with tamas, that is darkness. You see, this is also very profound. Kabira says, see, I'm surprised that nobody had any contradictory viewpoints, because I said, what is the only way to get rid of a shadow is go very close to the sun. Is there any other way to get rid of shadow? Yes, Sandeep ji?
When sun is straight above our head.
There is still a shadow, but it is below your feet. So we cannot see it, but it is there. Yes,
Like
Ekant,
this.
what were you saying?
To go in the dark. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
And
You said if you go in the dark, you will not see a shadow. That is what Kabira is cautioning. Kabira is saying that if your mind is influenced by tamas, where tamas is darkness, it may seem shadowless. It may seem like there is no shadow. It may seem that you are somehow not impacted by Maya. But that darkness itself is Maya, he's saying. He's saying that you need to understand. What do you mean by if I am walking in the darkness, there will not be a shadow? That darkness is the shadow. So Kabira is cautioning us. He's saying if our mind has tamasic influence, we will not be able to perceive, we will not be able to identify the impact of Maya, because we are so into it ourselves. Such profound things they have said, Therefore, our spiritual journey should lie in continuously moving towards the Sat, towards the radiant truth, and accepting Maya. You have to accept it as part of existence. You just should never be entangled by it. The moment you say, I'm not impacted by Maya, you are big time in Maya. Just somebody saying, I can walk in the sunlight without creating a shadow. What will you call such a person? The same word Krishna has used. He said delusional. That is completely delusional. So let us see how we can integrate all of this. The yoga of renunciation. Because it's not just theory, there's a lot of practical guidance given. The first step, recognizing that renunciation begins in the mind. Renunciation is not something you do externally. And this is what Krishna explained in the second chapter, 2.41, where he said, those who follow this path, they have a firm and determined intellect, and without a singular focused aim, you cannot. If you are indecisive, if you have too many doubts going on, then progress is not possible for you. So he wants us to have single pointed focus rather having multiple objects of focus. That is why he said ananyas chintayanto mam. He said have ananya chintan, single pointed focus. When you have such a focus, your intelligence will allow you to perform actions without being entangled to the results. So Krishna is beautifully again saying, I am asking you to perform actions without attachment to results, and the only way you can actually do that is if you are single pointed focus on me. If your focus is always on me, whatever you do, you will be able to do as a Tyagi. So work becomes a sacrifice when it is performed as an offering. Sharing knowledge can become charity when you offer without expectation. And when you endure difficulties, that becomes your tapasya. You accept it with equanimity. Sitoshna sukha dukkhada, where he said a little bit of heat, little bit of cold. If you can tolerate that without getting disturbed, that is also tapasya. It's not that I have to stand in one leg, that is tapasya, and if I stand in one leg for 10 years, then I will get this, I will get that. That is not real tapasya, is what Krishna is saying. Very, very beautiful. So by applying these principles, we can transform even ordinary actions into spiritual practices. That is the profound teaching of Sri Krishna. So see, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, and especially in this concluding chapter, Krishna is emphasizing that Bhakti, again he emphasizes, Bhakti is the foundation that makes this kind of true renunciation possible. So Krishna has given us the science, and then Krishna says, if you want to succeed in this science, you need Bhakti. What is that Bhakti? He is saying Ananya Chintan. And that is how this science will make sense, and this will be able to fulfill that. So let us reflect on this. Let us try to understand what true renunciation is. Let us try to understand that it's not about escaping the world, but it is about transforming our relationship with the world. Very powerful, very beautiful. So true renunciation is not running away from the world or escaping the world, but it is about how we transform our relationship with the world. It is not about inaction, but it is about rightful action with the right mindset. And it is not about rejecting life, but it is about living it fully. How can you live life fully? Can you live life fully if you are a slave? You have to be free if you have to live life fully. That is what Krishna says. He says, you can live life fully only when you are free of bondage. And how can you be free of bondage? That is what he has been explaining now. So I hope it is all making sense, and also it is not about caring less, but it is about caring holistically. See how powerful these lessons are. Very, very powerful. So the path that Krishna is outlining, it requires what? It requires wisdom also. It requires devotion also. It requires discrimination also. And it requires compassion and love also. All put together, that is the magic ingredient. And this is for anybody who wants to live a full, complete life. So the question asked by Arjuna becomes our own invitation for introspection. How can we introspect? For example, we can say, can I, like the lotus flower, which is in the muddy water, but still not impacted by it, can I live like that in the world? That is the first point of introspection. Can I act with full engagement while still internally being completely free? That is the second introspection. Can I too become a spiritual warrior, tiger among humans, who has the courage to not just fight external battles, but who has the courage to confront my own internal demon, my own ego, my own pride? Do I have that courage? So I think these three powerful introspections is what we should take away after the end of this first part of the 18th chapter. Because this is what true renunciation is, and this is what is going to give us true transformation. So I hope this all made sense, and this is just the first part of 18th chapter. As you can see how profound it is and how Krishna has brought everything together and beautifully orchestrated all of that. So with that, I can stop talking. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your continued support, and association. If you had any questions, comments, suggestions, or any doubts, then we can invoke Keshi Nishudana and pray that those doubts go away. Yes, Sulataji.
Guruji, in chapter 5, Krishna has spoken about this karma sannyasa and nishkama karma yoga, isn't it? There where he said to become karma sannyasa, you need to elevate yourself by being evolving yourself with nishkama karma yoga, and then you need not through becoming a karma sannyasa you can achieve liberation, but for nishkama karma yoga you need not be karma sannyasa. Being nishkama karma yoga you can achieve liberation.
Yes. Krishna said that karma sannyasa is not for everybody. He said there are some specific type of people who are qualified for that. They are people who have already fulfilled all their duties. For them, a guru can initiate them into karma sannyasa. So they are a special breed of people. It is not for everybody. And he says for the rest of humanity, you don't need karma sannyasa. You can, like Kulataji pointed out, you can follow the path of nishkama karma and still. See, Arjuna was not a sannyasi, right? He was a warrior. But Krishna is teaching him how to get liberation. And that is the whole message for all of us. Very, very powerful lessons here. I hope this was not too much. Was it too much? Did it feel like that? Or?
You made it very beautiful with those Kabir Doha and all those things, Guruji. It was very beautiful.
That Doha, the meaning given, and even though that's what you told is little bit more. So comparing both things, we are getting lighter part. I feel like that.
Yes. See, I'm keeping on asking if you have any question or doubts because this is the last chapter. So I want to make sure that before we say goodbye to each other at the end of this, we should not go with doubts still lingering. That's the whole reason. And feel free if you feel like it, you can also raise your doubts in our satsang group if there are any. But make sure that at least as we follow 18th chapter, each concept becomes completely clear. No doubts in your mind. For example, in the first set of slokas, Krishna is clearing the doubt about renunciation. So at least today, the concept of renunciation should be extremely clear. If there is any doubt there, then you should raise it either now or you can raise it in the forum. Make sure that it is very clear because that is how we are supposed to lead our lives and go towards spiritual evolution. Okay? So thank you so much. Hare Krishna then. See you all in the next session.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare Krishna.